Stephen, really good to have you here today. So Stephen Chun has 30 years experience in lean. That's a lot of years. Most of that experience is in operations and strategy across quite a few diverse industries. Currently, he's a senior advisor / executive coach with Lean Coaching Inc., a boutique global consulting firm. Well, Stephen, welcome. Good to see you again. It's probably been a year or two since we last talked.
Yeah, probably. That sounds about right. Through the COVID years.
Yeah. So Stephen, you want to tell us a little bit about your current position and sort of what it has to do with lean? Is it like totally lean, or does it got other facets to it?
I suppose it depends on one's interpretation, right? How people think about lean today, right? It always takes a different derivation, but right. So I was in healthcare earlier, I think the last time. Yeah. I did this with 1-year classes. And more recently, I left healthcare. I joined up with I would say a consulting firm with some of my former ex-McKinsey colleagues back in the day. And in my role, just given the course of time and years of my experience, I now help a lot of executives think through how do they start to really move their organization. Yes, you're correct from a lean point of view, but lean marketing, lean operations, lean design, just for lack of better terms, total operations effectiveness, but all based upon the Toyota way of thinking of how you develop organizations. So I don't really use the word lean as much in my call it vocabulary because it has different definitions to many different executives. But profit, margins, growth, revenues, all those things seem to strike a chord.
Yeah, no, definitely. So Stephen, 30 years in lean. Can you tell us a little bit about your lean journey? You started out at Cal Poly, didn't you?
I did, absolutely. So hoorah, go Mustangs. My son, I mentioned to you once before, Eric is now a Cal Poly student also, following my footsteps. I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but anyway. Maybe I'll have to get him into one of your classes someday. But yeah, I've been really fortunate. So through Cal Poly, I was able to land a job with Toyota. And in the day, I didn't necessarily know that Toyota was really driving this, call it huge automotive revolution in the industry. And but that was really my training ground for 10 years. And then went to McKinsey & Company, was recruited to help to grow McKinsey & Company's operations practice. And I know Eric knows quite a few folks now out of McKinsey because that's been one of their big core emphasis. And then from there, wanted to just run companies. So I played in the private equity space, turning companies. Most of them were usually in the negative, so meaning they're burning cash as opposed to generating a lot of cash. And so I played in that space for about 3 or 4 turns of different type of companies, from medical and aerospace and automotive, et cetera. And then did a couple of years in the United States Air Force. I was fortunate. I was tapped on the shoulder to help lead, I would say, operations excellence with some of the 4-star generals and out in the Pentagon. And then ended up in consulting for 15 years with some former Toyota executives, which was just absolutely a blast. We supported the world, just all industries, whoever wanted to pay the most, essentially. That's kind of where we went to help to move different kind of companies around the globe. And then lastly, I would say, from my consulting experience, I ended up doing a lot of work in healthcare, eventually leaving my firm, and then moving into healthcare for about 10 years to try to help the US healthcare system. And here I am now finding myself back now, I would say consulting again, but just from a different experience point, being a little bit more entrepreneurial and actually pursuing more of a lean digital path of how we might be able to leverage technologies to accelerate an organization's learning.
Well, that's very interesting to me. One of the things that I'm in the process of doing, we're setting up the next Central Coast Lean Summit, which is going to be, as a shameless plug, is April 24th and 25th. But the theme of that summit is going to be the future of improvement, people and technology, and trying to understand what this digitization thing is going to be doing to, some of the practices that you and I know and love, in lean. It's so in person. It's so go to Gimba, feel the hardware kind of thing. But that's not necessarily linking up to the future. Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it is coming to an interesting merging point where technologies can absolutely be helpful, I would say, technically, to moving organizations. Maybe the speed in which we get data, the speed of machine learning and AI, that helps us as problem solvers, figure out, hey, what might we do next to move an organization or whatever their strategy is. And I think that's one. Two, I think it also helps us, especially with AI and machine learning, it might help us shortcut the mundane work that most people just don't want to do to get to, call it, the more exciting things that drive pretty creative solutions. And you're seeing that actually in today's world of, I hate to say it, Bezos and Elon Musk, right? I wouldn't say they're called it lean gurus, but they're using technologies to figure out how to solve complex problems faster with good enough data. And I think that's going to help lean leaders of today, executives and frontline folks, to really kind of move businesses faster, which is pretty exciting, actually. So I do think it's coming to an interesting merge, especially what I've seen in healthcare, for sure.
It's interesting too. One of the things I picked out from what you said was the idea of having these things help us with the problem solving. You heard from some of the students, we try to coach them not to jump to solution, which is sort of a big no in the lean space. And so many people are starting to see some of the sexy technology and they say, hey, it's kind of a force fit sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
But having the underlying skills of problem solving, is one of the things we can do to maybe help students avoid that.
Yeah, I would also say along with it, I probably do a lot of reading and work. And I hate to say it, I shouldn't say work like I'm a psychologist, but in the space of psychology and organizational understanding of human beings. So even with all this technology and even with all these creative solutions, things still need to get done, right? And sometimes equipment and technology and machines help, but it's almost always still through people. It's just in a different way in today's time versus maybe what I grew up with 30 some years ago from Toyota days. So, the psychology, human side of it, I think it will still be there, but shifting in different ways.
Yeah, I think you sort of tweaked Wes on one of his soapbox issues. So Wes.
Actually, I clued into something that I thought was really interesting. I was wondering if you could expound more. You said that they're using technology and good enough data. And it sounded like you were being very intentional about this like good enough data concept. What did you mean by using good enough data versus using data?
Yeah. Okay. No, I am glad you picked up on that phrase because as I've been leading different companies, I found that certain leaders want perfect data, but perfect data to what end relative to the actual need. And so I would say good enough data relative to, and I'm going to use my other catchphrase, being a consultant at times, fit for purpose, right? Is what the data you're doing and the analytics behind it good enough to be able to get to a decision that's fit for the purpose and what you're trying to do, period. But it forces that question so that we're not, analysis paralysis, number one, not get anything done. And or two, you didn't get enough data and you created too much error in the spirit of actually making a decision, right? Knowing that not every decision will be perfect. So, and so that's a phrase that I've used commonly with a lot of leaders because it really helps them be more clear with their teams, how much effort and energy and or analytics is needed to get to a decision and then to a, call it an action.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, good pickup on that, by the way.
Yeah, so I want to encourage the students either in the class or on Zoom to, if you want to ask Steven a question, go ahead and type in the chat. It looks like or you can raise your hand like Jack. Jack, you want to go ahead and hop on to ask your question?
I saw Jack's hand up there.
Hey, I just had a question about when you worked at McKinsey, because my dad was also a healthcare consult. He did a little bit of healthcare consulting for McKinsey, so that kind of struck me on like when you said that.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was back in the late 90s. I was at McKinsey. And it was just touching healthcare at that point. Healthcare was not call it lean focused, or I hate to say it, even operationally execution focused. And then so my healthcare work for the most part has been over the last 12 years. So outside when
Okay.
I was done with McKinsey already. Yeah.
Yeah, he was, I think, like 2010 to 2012 or so.
Got
And
it. Okay.
he kind of went like from that to like startups,
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
it, with that consulting background. But he was really excited that I'd like taking this class, because I had no idea that I knew he did consulting, but he's like, no way you're doing lean. Like that was
Yeah.
like, that's what I used to do.
Very
So,
good.
but
So
yeah,
keep in mind for all of you that healthcare, I think, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, if you maybe know the number. I think healthcare is something like 15 to 18 or 20% of the total GDP of the United States.
Yeah.
So because our healthcare system is so expensive, our pharmaceutical development, our biotech device industry, all the different other technologies that go with it. So that's why healthcare is such a big focus around how can we reduce the cost while still keeping up the quality. So you'll find a lot of emphasis in going towards healthcare industry in any of those kind of things, right? And including policy setting. Yeah. So great. Well, good to hear. Maybe someday
yeah,
I'll meet your
cool.
dad then.
And
Thank
we
you.
actually have it. We have another Jack. So we're gonna have a Jack inception here. Jack, do you want to pop on and ask your question?
And Wes, can you get the screen to pop over to them or take it off?
Mhm.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Chun. I was just going to ask, what has been your favorite industry to work in or consult for? And then I just had a follow-up question after hearing you talk about healthcare. What do you think about like Mark Cuban's new company coming out that's like reducing the cost of a bunch of like needed drugs? Like I think it's like insulin and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah. So the industries that I've liked have shifted over time. I was kind of an after automotive. I was sick of automotive, and I swore never to work back in automotive. But I'll get back to that in a minute. And then more recently, though, I spent probably a lot of time in aerospace because I was kind of an aviation geek. I was early on, maybe stemming from my Cal Poly days and having aero, roommates. And I had worked at NASA at one point too. But so aviation became a big thing for me. But then I started to find myself really liking the service sector. So government sector, healthcare sector, moving towards things that I thought really mattered. I've just been fortunate in my life to position myself to want to do things that I think are helpful, not just for my own personal gain, but the learnings that we all gain, I would say, in our lean space is not something that most people learn. I'll be honest, right? Where you get your learning is kind of how you develop your methodologies and problem solving. So I was really fortunate from Toyota days to kind of learn around how to learn. And so I really position myself for industries now that really kind of intrigue me. So things like resources, oil, gas, water, utilities across the globe. Healthcare, absolutely, but more United States, but not to say it doesn't count towards other type of countries. So that's kind of where I've been moving my energy and efforts, maybe at some point politics. Yeah, but regarding Cuban, yeah, absolutely. I'm actually ecstatic about a lot of the, call it the billionaires of the world, right? Some of that's just a matter of luck. So just to be fair to everybody here and hard work. But I like when they're putting their energy towards things that matter. And because if we know there's huge amounts of waste, some of the things I picked up on in some of the problem solving that you guys are all doing, right? Waste is everywhere. And if we can start to really drive out those things that really matter to the world, disease, development of different drugs, healthcare, our natural resources, then everybody wins. And those are the things that really excite me. And I think sometimes you need these new way of thinking. We're call it technology thinkers are looking at disruptive methodologies towards archaic ways of business that we've had over the last 200 years. And I think the new breed of lean strategic thinkers will not only have great ideas, but how do you really do it, right? How do you test it? And that's exciting to me. Anything down that path. So, going back to automotive, but now I'm back in automotive by chance because I'm doing a lot in work of the electronification of how do you start to get out away from what they call the internal combustion engine, ICE, and convert to electronification with lithium or any other kind of battery technology. So I'm on the mining side of lithium, and then the car conversion by chance of how do you convert those industries. So I'm finding myself coming 360. So no, thank you for the question.
Yeah,
Good job.
I'm gonna get like one more question, I think is we have time for. Is there anybody else has a question for Stephen?
Anyone?
Well, that's a good way to drive the quiet, in a thing. So Stephen, this has been fascinating. It sounds like you're working on some really cool stuff. I really like, your Wes even sort of wrote up on the board, putting your energy towards things that really matter. And it seems like it's obvious that that's what you're doing now in your career. And hopefully you've inspired some students to maybe go in that same direction. So you got about 70, 80 students on the line. They're all sort of new to leans, just starting out on their lean journey. And I'd like to wrap up this interview with asking you, what kind of piece of advice do you have for the people that are listening that are just starting out?
Yeah, I think it's two things. And it's probably the same thing I say to my Cal Poly son, right? He's a junior now, so two things. One is not to get stagnant, right, in your learning journey. We'll always keep looking for things that are going to keep challenging you, either with the same company you're in, or as you look for, call it different career paths. I think that's hugely important because it keeps your learning journey and therefore your problem solving journey about how you would engage with whatever you're trying to drive, right? It's when you're learning new things and not getting stagnant, you force your problem solving, right? And then that leads into the second thing, which I think kind of tied together. And it's being spoken of all over industry to this day for maybe the last 5 or 6 years, is this whole idea of curiosity. How do you keep curiosity moving? How do you think through the questions that you need to ask or be answering, either way, right? How do you position yourself so that you can continue to keep learning? And that goes back to the stagnant piece. And when people lose curiosity, that's when you lose learning. And then therefore, more than most, you tend to lose the drive to whatever you're trying to deliver on. So, those kind of things, aspirations is what I consider key in people's character,
Yeah.
right? But it's not easy. It's easy to get stagnant, and it's easy to lose curiosity, and it's easy to say, I just know that, right? Versus putting yourself in a position where, you have to keep learning. It's a very, very, prone position to be in, and not many people always want to do that. That's been my career push, is always pushing myself in those two ways, but it hasn't been what I've seen of all colleagues of mine.
All right, Stephen, awesome, great
job.
Great to talk to you again, and you passed. We'll keep you on the list to allow you to come back. Good to see that your son is making some progress. Hopefully, we'll get him in a league class.
Yeah.
I know it's not always easy to coach and teach your sons and daughters to at least this topic. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But he is now doing an internship, Eric, at a titanium metal processor. Wow. So he's taking some months off to go do a co-op, and using what he's learning from Cal Poly. So if anyone knows him, his name's Kanoa, and my same last name. And you could always, if you ever run into him, say, hey, I watched your dad.
All right, good deal.
Okay, guys.
So we're gonna parting exercise here. Let's go back to the gallery view. Let's have everybody snap on their video. Give Stephen a nice little Zoom wave. As a thank you, Stephen. Thank you. We're trying to get you as many people on the
Absolutely.
at this point. And we will see you.